Hey, it's BT with Tales from a Gemini. My guest today is the graceful renegade, Grace Schuessler. She's a woman who had it all, and she decided to give it all and start traveling the world on her motorcycle. Where have you heard that story before? She's a published author. She's a videographer. And she talks about how that really saved her life, but how motorcycles just came into her life and she got bit by the bug. And now all she does is write about motorcycles and travel around the world. And we talk about her destinations, what she wants to do, and just life in general. I think you're going to really love her. Enjoy my friend, Grace Schuessler, the graceful renegade. Excited? Wyatt, I'm so excited. I'm serious.
When are you not?
I know, I'm always excited, but I'm talking to Grace Schuessler, the graceful renegade. How can I not be excited? 1, 2, 3. Hey, it's BT with Tales from a Gemini. And I am so excited to have this guest on. I mean, I always stalk through the Instagram, and I found the Instagram and I was so excited. But then I found out she don't like pancakes. She takes waffles over pancakes. And then I go, why even talk to her? I mean, but I already had her schedule, so I guess I got to talk to her. But why don't you like pancakes? Why don't you like pancakes, Grace?
It's not that I don't like pancakes. It's just a waffle preference, I guess, is how I would put it. Like, if I'm going to be carbing up in the morning, it's waffles, not pancakes. So, yeah.
Why waffles over pancakes? Like, what did pancakes ever do to you?
I think it's the sugar thing. I think it's just like an overload of sugar. Whereas with waffles, there's just a little bit less. I don't know. It's just, I don't know what it is. It's just, I guess it's just me. So
being there, we talked about you being German, and I know a little bit of German. I have 2 German aunts, and I love German pancakes only because they put all that powdered sugar on top of it. And I love sugar. So I can't believe I'm more German than you at this moment.
you are right now. Yeah. And I'm mildly ashamed, but I do love beer. So I think that kind of adds back to me for that. So yeah, I'll take that one.
We're going 1-on-1 right now. We're going 1-on-1.
Yeah.
I love the post today. It's so weird when I saw your post that I go, I guess we're talking about this. That was the one where you're naked, you're naked on the motorcycle. And it's like, I was like, okay. And it's funny because like I always, whenever I have a female guest on, like I always try to keep everything just like all business when I, ask for if you want to be a guest. I don't want to leave any wiggle room where you think I'm a creep or whatever.
Right.
But I saw that post. I was like, okay, I guess we're talking about this. So,
yeah.
So where was that shot taken of you being butt naked on a motorcycle?
So one of the reasons I posted that shot actually today too is because it was from the last photo shoot I did when I was in Oregon, which was a little over a year ago, and I just got back to Oregon this week, so it's nice to be back. But one of the reasons I do random posts like that, which they're not really planned far ahead, but every once in a while I like to throw something into the algorithm that's going to mix it up a little bit, and photos that show a little bit more tend to be ones that get a little more popular and more views, etc. So, it's not really my usual MO, but mixing it up, keeping it fun. Yeah.
I was like, okay. And honestly, I was showing my producer Wyatt this. You look a spitting image. I mean, of my ex-girlfriend, the one that really, really broke my heart. I mean, you look exactly like her. If it's a passing glance, it's more like even just looking at you now, you look just like her. And I show my producer, he goes, oh my God, yes. So if I just break down and start crying right now, then, just keep talking and I'll get over it.
I promise I will do my best to not make you cry. I hope that's accepted. Yeah. Yeah, I know. We blondes break a lot of hearts. We try not to, but I think it just happens without us realizing it sometimes. So,
what's funny? She had the exact same cockiness. I swear to God, we were sitting there, we were laying in bed one time, and I swear she goes, "Why do you want to fall in love with me? I break men's hearts." And I was thinking, this was at least 15 years ago. And at the time, I was nobody's backup. I was the Black Tom Brady myself, and I was like, "Are you serious?" And then about 3 months later, I was like, why are you doing this to me? And so, yeah.
Well, I promise I will do my best to not break your heart. How does that sound?
Don't make a promise you can't keep there, Grace.
All right, deal.
So where in Oregon are you at now? Where in Oregon are you at right now?
I'm in Bend, Oregon. So I'm in Central Oregon. I lived here for a number of years before I left last summer to do my year on the road. So I spent the last year living off my motorcycle and traveled North America, traveled through Southeast Asia for a couple months, and I've just kind of been a motorcycle nomad, and but this was home before I left. So I actually just finished a really big videography project. I helped film a documentary about a group of veterans riding up to the Arctic Circle and back. And for the next few months, my life is going to revolve around editing and producing that documentary. So I just came back to Bend for the fall, I guess early fall, to get some work done and just get some good writing in. So.
You know what's funny is I spent a lot of time in Bend, Oregon. I remember I took some one-nighters out there. I had a buddy who worked out there, and I stayed with him for like about a week at a time. I did like a month of the Pacific Northwest, and it was so therapeutic. People don't realize once you get to the West, it's so spread out, but it's I love it. There's nothing, to me, there's nothing better. I mean, in October, the way the skies are, and then it gets darker early, but it's still more beautiful. And then they take those beautiful rides along like the lakes and it's just beautiful and therapeutic. And that's the first place I went hiking was in Bend. So yeah.
I mean, the one thing that's great about Oregon, particularly Central Oregon, is we have the best terrain in the US because you have your mountains, you have your mountain lakes. Obviously, Mount Bachelor is a really big ski mountain, but then we're also 2 hours from the Pacific Northwest rainforest. That's the only rainforest in North America. And then we're at high desert too, where there's a lot of volcanic activity. So you have the Alvord Desert, which is really cool. You can get out into the Oregon Badlands, which is also really cool. Just beautiful juniper trees, sagebrush. It's awesome. And you just don't get that a lot of places. It's absolutely one of the most scenic places I have ever lived. And I just love it here. It's amazing.
So growing up with you, what was it like growing up for you? I mean, were you like a rambunctious kid? Were you a sports kid? Were you a nerd? I mean, I know you're an author, so what did you do?
I'm a nerdy Midwest kid. I grew up around St. Louis, actually, and I was definitely a super nerd until I got to college. But I played high-level basketball all through high school and for the first part of college. So I was an athlete. I did the high-level athlete thing, and I loved it. It's one of the reasons why into adulthood, I obviously took a lot of what I learned during those years, and where hard work pays off. You learn that being an athlete. But I was always a little bit of a rebel in the sense that I always did my own thing, and that's how I've ended up here, essentially. Yeah.
What position did you play in basketball? What position?
I actually had a very interesting position. I could rebound pretty well, and I also could shoot 3-pointers. So I was a rotating 3-4 position. Yeah.
Oh shit! So you were like a combination of kind of like a Steph Curry meets the other guy. I don't know, Klay Thompson. So you could do it all.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, that was the idea. Yeah, and I was always the person you wanted on the free throw line at the end of the game because that's all I did for a lot of my early years of high school was just shoot free throws. And as a result, that was my thing. So, yeah.
Well, what town did you grow up in? I grew up around Oklahoma, so I know that area.
Okay. I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri. Okay. So just outside of there, kind of in, I guess, around the Chesterfield area, if you're familiar.
Yes, I know that area. Yes, I went up there and wrestled up there. So yes.
Yeah. It's fun suburban area. It was great growing up. I have an older sister. She was also an athlete. She actually played Division I water polo. So we were big time athletes, big time nerds, and really enjoyed growing up there. It was kind of like idyllic childhood type of thing. So yeah.
And also you love, what I love about you is you describe your love for reading and novels. And to me, and there's nothing wrong with Kindles. I think it's great to be part of that generation. But to me, there's nothing like reading a book, smelling that book, and dog-earing it. Isn't that the best when you dog-ear a book and come back to it and open up? It sounds like nothing, but it's everything.
It's everything. I totally agree with you. Yeah, I guess one of the things that a lot of people don't know about me is I'm actually a published author. I have 3 published books. I'm super proud of them. They never really went anywhere, but I was an English lit major in college. And my original plan was actually to get my PhD and teach at university. But unfortunately, one of the things that I realized when I was about to graduate was I didn't really have that personality type of staying in one place forever. Obviously, now I can see that right in front of my face after spending a year on the road. But so I kind of gave up on that dream and jumped into just kind of working through marketing and management and business, and eventually got myself here. But I am a huge book nerd. I probably read a book a week. If not, I listen to a book on tape every week. And there is nothing like having books. I mean, I don't have them here with me, but I have a storage unit full of books that are dog-eared, highlighted, notes in them. I just don't think there's anything better than that. So
What was the author that really caught your eye? Like, I mean, growing up, there's always that one thing that happens in your life where you go, bam. Like, I remember getting a Z50 in third grade, and that started. So what was the book, or what was it that started for you?
That's actually a really good question. I haven't thought about it in a minute, but one of the first books that really sparked I guess, the inner love of literature for me was actually Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. It just that like gothic horror novel and that kind of intrinsic question of like, who is actually the monster, the man, or what he created. I don't know why, but I guess I think I read that around age 15 or 16 for the first time. It's still one of my favorite books. It just completely captivated me and sparked that diehard love of all things books. So yeah, I think that was probably the catalyst for everything after that.
I know, was it because you could identify in some way with one of the characters? Like, what spoke to you specifically?
I think the question really that got to me was the misconception that a lot of popular culture had about Frankenstein being the monster, but Frankenstein is actually essentially the doctor and creator.
Yes.
And I loved the idea that like, if you actually go to the book versus what we've seen in a lot of the movies, the monster is actually the doctor and how he completely disintegrates his own life based on his own issues. And realizing that it just kind of propelled that question of human, I guess, dichotomies of like the light and dark we all have within us, and what happens sometimes when we aren't able to deal with the darker sides of ourselves, and how it can kind of derail a lot of the pieces of who we are. So at a young age, I fell in love with that concept, and also just kind of that nature that Mary Shelley had as an author in a time when she hung out with a whole bunch of male writers, and she ended up writing this incredible, like really life-changing book for society and for just anybody who picks it up. It blew my mind. It was very cool, and it just totally sucked me in.
I think with your love of writing and being a videographer and the times that we're in now, and I always say, if you don't watch TV, it's a better time. If you don't watch TV and get sucked into that dark hole, it's a better time. And I think for what you do, I could see you doing a series where it's like Scooby-Doo meets David Carradine's Kung Fu, where you ride into a town by yourself. You like that rebel rather than town. You know, like back in the 50s and 60s, whatever, you know, you go into town, you get the leather jacket, the guy with the leather jacket on, and the girls are like, yeah, oh my God. And, you know, it's like, he's the rebel, kind of like a Fonzie, but then you leave town like, oh, come back. Where now the tables are reversed and you're the one who rides into town. You're hot. You come in and guys are all trying to hit on you, but you, for some reason, you find like a mystery while you're in that town and you solve it. And there's always dudes to fall in love with you and you have to break their heart as you leave. And I think that would be, you should write something like that.
I love that idea. I mean, also like so many people these days, I find true crime and just those kind of mysteries of humans to be completely fascinating. So I could definitely fall down that rabbit hole pretty fast. It actually, that just reminded me, and I'll just share this story. So I was in Southeast Asia for 3 months, and I traveled through Vietnam, Bali, and Thailand. But one of the most incredible parts of that was I feel like I had that almost every day in Vietnam, because I'm 5'10" and I'm blonde and I'm on a motorcycle that's fully loaded with gear and I'm fully geared up. And I would ride into towns where they obviously have seen tourists before, but not many tourists like me. I'm obviously also very tatted up. So I would get off my bike and people would just come over and just, they stare, you know, and they want to take pictures and they don't really understand what the heck you're doing there. But very much that vibe of like stranger in a strange land that I actually, like as a traveler, I love, because it submerges you in exactly where you are and in the culture there. But it does also take a toll after a while when you feel like you're constantly like a part of a circus, almost like a traveling circus, rolling into town and being a spectacle, you know? So.
Well, yes and no, but then also it's like, no offense, but you know, you do have the tats on your back and then you have to really go like this to read them. So if you're in line, I mean, am I not going to look like, you know, they're reading, like, am I not going to look at them and read them and, you know, like, and then ask you about them? So it's like,
it happens all the time. I'll be in a coffee shop and I'll have a tank top on and It's I'll have just like a woman behind me and she'll just go, wait, don't move yet. And she'll just be like, I'm just finishing reading your back. And it always makes me laugh because it probably happens once a week. It's just the quotes on my back are a lot of quotes from English literature and everything else. So it's not just kind of your typical stuff. It's, Oscar Wilde, Mary Shelley,
Yes.
a lot of those type of people. And so as a result, people are fascinated by it. It's kind of cool.
Favorite Oscar Wilde quote?
Oh,
I'll tell you mine if you tell me yours.
I was going to say, I don't really have a favorite of his off the top of my head. I mean, Oscar Wilde's writing was just so profound in a time when people didn't quite accept it because they didn't accept him. But do you have a favorite Oscar Wilde quote?
Be yourself because everyone else is already taken.
Yeah, that's
Because
such a good one.
I was in a comedy troupe and we were trying to come up with something and long story short, it was like we were like, four Black comics, but we didn't, and nothing's wrong with it, but we weren't, from the hood or whatever, or very street, and we were just who we were. But so we got called sellouts because we were playing mainstream rooms or whatever, and but we always stayed who we were. And then my friend found it and said, "Be yourself, everyone else," and we took that quote because it just hit us right on the nose, and that's why I always loved what he did. Always.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, and that's so many artists of that era too. I mean, one of my favorite quotes that is on my back is a Vincent van Gogh quote, which is, "For my part, I know nothing with any certainty, but the sight of the stars makes me dream." And I think that just embodies so much of that era, which is you had these incredible people that had these visions and these ideas in their art. But the times they lived in like any era of time, ours is this way now as well. You never know what's going to happen. There's a certain level of uncertainty and impermanence with everything. And the world, especially now, is constantly changing. And the amount of media and news and things we have that shift every 5 to 10 seconds right in front of our faces on our phones is just, it's so substantial and it's mind blowing at times. So it's kind of cool to go back and see how relatable even those moments for them feel to us.
That's why I feel when you disconnect, there's no better disconnect to me than just being on a motorcycle. And for you to be an adventure rider, that has to be even better. I mean, just to ride, period, is great because you get to clear your head and the sound of the bike. Even if you have your Bluetooth going with music, there's just nothing. I don't have to tell you that, but it's nothing better than being on a bike. But just the fact that for you, especially on those trails where you've been to the Arctic Circle, you've been to Asia. I've seen where you're going in Vietnam and you're taking your spills, but is there nothing better than disconnecting on a motorcycle?
No, I mean, there's a reason why I love it so much and why I've essentially started to build a career around motorcycle riding and travel. It's because there's nothing better than being on a bike. You're so utterly, in your environment at that point. You're exposed to everything. You're not in a car, you're not in a box, you are out in the elements. So if it's hot, if it's cold, if the sun is setting, if it's raining, if there's people out and around, if there's animals out and around, if you're on a trail or you're off-road on a gravel road, you're so present because you have to be.
Yes.
You are 100% there. And I think especially as a traveler, obviously my love of motorcycles grew from road riding, but when you take that to travel and the next level, you just experience so much more and you actually feel integrated in the world around you in a way that you don't get doing anything else.
What was your first motorcycle? How did that come about? And what was that journey to where you are now?
Oh, it's actually a great story. So I got my first motorcycle when I was 22, and there's a great story behind that. So I was a huge lover of badass women when I was young. So like Trinity in the Matrix, Lara Croft. I also loved Lisbeth from The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
Yes.
And
yes.
all these women are mainly tattooed and ride motorcycles and are badass. And so when I was 16, 17 years old, I was dying to get a bike, but my father's a physician and my mom owns a small business. Neither of them have really ever been on motorcycles, and they were adamant that I didn't. But the promise that they made me give them was that I would not buy a motorcycle or ride a motorcycle as long as I was still being educated. So essentially, as long as I stayed in school, no bike. I graduated from college on a Thursday, And that Saturday, I got my first endorsement class in, graduated Sunday, bought a bike the next week.
Yes.
And the look on my parents' face, but I hated to surprise them, but that was the deal. And I think they went into it obviously with this idea that after a while I would give up on it, but I didn't. I mean, to me, getting a motorcycle was a quintessential piece of who I thought I was as a person. But out of respect and love to my parents, I just said, you know what? I'll wait. I'll bide my time. You can imagine how they feel now with me having a career where I ride motorcycles hours every day. They're not the biggest fans, but they're super supportive, and they hate when I tell that story because it's they feel like they were holding me back. But no, in general, I'm very happy I started riding at that age because I rode smart. I never did anything stupid. The stupidest thing I ever did was last year off-road, and I almost died, and thankfully I'm still here. But I really got a good foundation and base beneath my feet of how to operate a motorcycle, how to be comfortable on one. And the love has not died since then.
Honestly, I cannot begin to tell you how I wish that it was mandatory for people to take the safety class on a bike before you get a bike. I mean, I took a safety class for like insurance reasons. I remember watching a woman who thought she wanted to ride, and during the safety class drills, she fell over and her face was just ghostly white. And I don't know what happened to her after that. I don't know if she ended up getting a bike, but it was good that she saw what it was about. But I just remember seeing that look of horror on her face. And I mean, I think we do a disservice to motorcyclists when and they sell them a bike and that's it. They don't. I saw a dude who just got the bike, and I go, "Do you have a jacket?" And he looked at the sales guy and he goes, "I need to get a jacket." And then seriously, I go, "You got any gloves?" And the guy goes, "Do I need gloves?" And then the sales guy go, "Well, we can sell you gloves." I was making a sell phone. To the point, I looked at the sales guy. I go, "Hey, do I get a percentage of this? Do I get a commission from this?" I was doing his job for him, and the guy, I hope he's still around, but they just want to make the sale, and they don't care about the person. And that's my biggest thing with, that's why I love when you take the safety course, because that still rings in your head when you ride today.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, I think one of the biggest things that I struggle with personally, and I see this occasionally when I'm in different states, but the no helmet thing, it drives me nuts because, if this is gone, you don't get anything else. And, I'm guilty of, when it's warm, if I'm just doing a road ride around town, I won't have a jacket on. I always have gloves and boots and a helmet on. But if I'm doing any type of highway riding, any off-road riding, I'm in full gear all the time. And I hate going home I'll go visit my folks in Missouri, and it's like Harley heaven there, obviously, but there's just no helmets. And it gives me anxiety looking at people riding without them, because it's just, I'm worried.
But then again, I did see you on your Instagram with no helmet. I don't know where you were. I think you were in the Salt Flats or whatever. But I was like,
that was and that I tell people that was about 6 hours after I had my wreck. So I got into a wreck last year on my way to the Alvord Desert, and it was actually the week before I left Oregon. And at this point of riding, I had hit what I still think of as the pinnacle of my riding skill set with ADV riding. I was fearless and nuts and really enjoying it. Full gear, always, like safe at that capacity. But I was ripping down the Alvord highway out there, which is really dense gravel. You get a lot of ruts with deep gravel in it where you can lose your front tire. And I was having the time of my life riding out there, going 65, just gunning around. I had two of my best girlfriends in their cars behind me. And I just hit a rut, lost the front wheel, and made the mistake of braking instead of throttling through. And I wrecked going 65. Oh. And I, can't tell you how bad that hurt, because I still cringe thinking about it. But thankfully, other than very bad road rash, I had a very bloody torso. I actually had gravel get up under my suit, which doesn't happen very often. I had a concussion, and I had a lot of bruised and sprained ribs. The worst was I actually have, it's about healed now, but I have a hairline fracture down my scapula that they essentially really couldn't do much about other than just tell me it was going to hurt for a while. But I was out in the middle of the desert at that point, and I was alive, and I had 7 miles to get to our campsite, the turn for our campsite. And, once you kind of recover, I got my breath back. It took like 40 minutes, like just to kind of physically recover. I chugged some water and I got back on the bike because I knew if I didn't get back on the bike, I might not ever get back on the bike. Yes. It was one of those wrecks that just I knew was going to get in my head. And so I wanted to do as much as I could to alleviate that ahead of time. Now, once I got to the campsite and got my boots off, I, did not do myself any favors by riding around like a maniac for a little bit. But I had that moment with myself where, in the Alvert, there really are no laws. And I wanted to push myself a little bit to ride and feel better. And I did. And that's the one time I think there will ever be a video of me riding around without a helmet on out there. But it was worth it because I think I was able to at least maintain enough confidence that I wanted to keep off-road riding. And now here I am. So it was a good call.
Well, see, now that I know the story, now I feel bad for giving you shit.
Yeah. It's a long wraparound story, but it also is just very fun for me because I was out. It was my last weekend in Oregon, and knowing that I wasn't too traumatically injured other than being in an excruciating amount of pain. I was out there with such a fun group of people. I wanted to just try and get through it. So I definitely had some bourbon that weekend to numb the pain and got through. But it was worth it. Yeah.
Okay, so what was your first bike? The first bike you got after you graduated? What was the first bike?
I had a Honda Shadow.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
I had a Honda Shadow. I bought it for $3,500. It was my baby. I loved that thing. I still have moments where I dream about that bike just because, it's your first love. So
yes.
Definitely moments where I wish I still had it in the garage, but maybe I'll get another one of those someday.
Okay. And so how long did you how long did you ride on the street before you decided you needed something else?
Well, it was kind of happened when I moved out to Bend. I got divorced when I was living in Portland around 2019. So I moved out to Bend kind of to start over. And I moved out here at the time. I actually had a F700 GS BMW. Loved my Beamer, but
nice.
I did some touring and some solo camping just to kind of like get used to being alone and kind of enjoy being by myself for the first time in 10 years. And it was amazing. I fell in love with it. And then I started kind of trekking down some gravel roads and thinking that was fun. And then I made some friends here that had dirt bikes and that was fun. And then the next thing you know, I was an ATV rider and that was it. So yeah, that's how it happened.
I think to me personally, I think, anytime you grow up in an urban area, and there's nothing wrong with it, I think about 16 to 18 to about 23 or 24, they all get the, sport bikes and they rip up and down the town, which is great. Don't get me wrong. And I get it. And then all of a sudden they stop because they get a girlfriend or somebody gets pregnant. Then they got to sell the bike to get money, blah, blah, blah. And then they quit riding until they get to about 40. Then they get a Harley and then, and then da-da-da. And I knew I wanted to do something different. And it's just the fact that once I started traveling, like you said, once you start traveling and you get it right, it's the greatest thing ever. So what did you get wrong the first time you traveled a long ways? Because it took me a while to get it to where I know how to travel now. But in the beginning, I was like, rain gear? Who needs rain gear? And then all of a sudden, oh, okay, that's why I need rain gear. So how did you travel wrong in the first place?
Rain gear, definitely something I wish I had the first round. I didn't have it either. And then once your stuff is soaked, it's soaked for like 3 days. So yeah, it's got to remember that. I think the big thing that I learned was that I didn't need to bring a lot. That was kind of the better lesson. It was, I don't need to pack this much. I can actually get by with way less, And that was good to kind of slowly start to learn, okay, I can cut this. I didn't use it. Okay, I can cut this. I didn't use it. But the big thing I never traveled with that I always travel with now is like a really good off-road toolkit, even just if there's a mishap of sorts, because I got away for a lot of years with not having any tools on me and not having any issues. And I thankfully have not had a time where I've been without them, but I would not go anywhere without a good toolkit anymore. Yeah. I think that's essential no matter what, because you never know where you're going to be when you get a flat or something falls off your bike that you need to reattach, or something's going on with your chain or whatever else. And you just got to fix it yourself. I mean, tire pressure is something that a lot of people tend to not think about either. So there's a lot of basics you kind of learn along the way, but Yeah, for me, rain gear was one. The other thing is a good camping pillow. If you don't have a good camping pillow, you don't sleep. And I learned that and invested in one. And obviously, I think investing in what you sleep in with your tent is super important. But yeah, those are probably my big two as well.
Now, how did you, like when you camp? Do you actually like go a campground, or you just find a place to park the bike and go to sleep?
It completely depends on where I'm at. So a lot of times I'll go to campgrounds if that's what's available. The issue with dispersed camping, especially on the West Coast right now, is we have a very large homeless population.
Yeah.
And while I do think certain areas are safe, others tend not to be sometimes, especially if you're a solo female traveler. And so you just have to be conscientious. If you are going to do dispersed camping, there are great apps on your phone. Like I have iOverlander on my phone, and that is a really great way to find campsites that are kind of all over the place. But when you get up to like BC and Canada, dispersed camping is like pretty much the name of the game. You can camp wherever you want. So you just have to find those areas that, have a good little trail you can kind of get up to, ride down a road, find some quiet. But in general, I think campgrounds are amazing. They're getting more expensive because you have so many more people that are living that lifestyle now. So, intermittently, I try and do dispersed, but it just really depends.
Well, aren't you afraid of waking up next to like a rattler who's trying to get some, warmth, or maybe a bear wants to snuggle up against you, like you're like Goldilocks, and he goes, "Hey, I remember you." Like, aren't
Honestly,
you afraid of that?
I'm never afraid of the wildlife. It's more like if I'm in the middle of nowhere by myself, I actually feel super comfortable. And I think there's a lot of people where if you kind of get in the habit of pushing yourself the first few times, you start to realize that like being in the middle of nowhere means you are very alone. Now, granted, you do need to be prepared and whatever else, but you run a higher risk of somebody else doing something to you when you're in a higher human density of people at a campground than you do when you're by yourself. So yeah, I mean, when I'm in the US and I'm traveling, I do often conceal carry if I feel like I'm going to be doing a lot of traveling where I need to have that. And I have knives on me as well. But no, in the remote wilderness, I actually feel the safest. Like one of my favorite places to camp is in the Badlands Desert that's just outside of Bend. And there's tons of wildlife out there, but no one else is out there. And it's absolutely beautiful and quiet and fun to be out there by yourself.
What's your worst like creeper story? Has there ever been where you go, "Oh, I don't trust this person"?
I have two stories. I have one that went badly and one that was kind of a turnaround that actually was great. So one of the tips I give a lot of women in particular is always leave your helmet locked on your bike somewhere, just in case you need to make a quick getaway. I started doing this when I did my first big solo trip down the West Coast last October. And I stopped in a town in Northern California that was not super great. I know they've been having a lot of issues with fentanyl and the opioid epidemic and all these other things, just a lot of kind of rumors of that. So me doing any dispersed camping was out of the question. I found a campsite for the night, but I got to town really late. It had been a huge ride day, and I popped in and grabbed a beer and some food, walked back out to my bike, and I was confronted by a gentleman who looked like he was definitely on some sort of something and wouldn't leave me alone. And there was really no one around. So I kind of had to get on my bike slowly and keep him distracted. And then I made a break for it and just gunned it out of there before anything could get weird. You hit situations like that where you just need to be smart. And the reason I was able to do that is because everything was locked down on my bike and I had my key in my hand. So thankfully it was just a quick turn and I had the throttle and I was out. But it's always a better way to know that you can get out of there real fast in case you are dealing with something like that. I had another situation that actually turned out to be kind of hilarious. I was camping in the middle of, I think this was actually in Southern Washington, and it was a dispersed camping site. So middle of nowhere. And I went to the end of the road because I really just wanted to be solo. I'd had a really rough day. This is actually at a time when I just bought a Sony A7S III. It had died on me that day. I had to backtrack the next day to go pick up a new one at Best Buy. So I was in a mood of sorts and just wanted to be by myself. And ended up camping at the end of this road. It was a beautiful sight. And then about an hour before it got dark, two guys came up in a truck to camp. And they were definitely giving me kind of like weird vibes at first.
Yeah.
And then they had another gal come join them. And so I just kind of kept an eye on it. I didn't really feel any red flags, but I really kept to myself. And then one of the guys came over and introduced himself. And he was just like, so I don't want to be weird, but like the girl over there follows you on Instagram and she knows about you through the community. Can we come hang out with you? And I was just like, yeah. And they came over and they brought beers over and were so nice. So, you know, you have those moments sometimes where you need to be wary of other people, but for the most part, people are awesome and people do just kind of want to connect and hang out. And that was such a good moment for me because I'd had such a bad day. To have people come over and be generous and actually want to talk about motorcycles and riding and being outside was awesome. And so you kind of can get both sides of the coin, always be prepared, but, you know, never go into it with an attitude that people are out to get you because most of the time they're not.
Unless you're riding on the highway and they don't see you, or you're in town and they make that left turn in front of you, then they're out to get you.
Oh yeah, I know the left turn.
But other than that, honestly, you're so right. I mean, it's like, especially you being a good-looking woman who knows how to ride, independent. It's like you're like, you know, like ding 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 ding. I mean, yeah, you're like a superhero. I mean, you should run for president. Who wouldn't like you? Democrats, Republicans, independents. I mean, you have every box checked off. I mean, you write, you're smart. I mean, you're everything. You don't bang it over the head. How you're, you know, I'm gonna say feminist, but you know, you're all about women power, which is great. But you don't bang her over the head with it. You just like, you know, you let it be. It's just gradual. You don't like, you know, I'm a feminist. Goddamn it, you're everything. So I don't know why you don't run for like some public office and make it where motorcycles are mandatory in life.
I would definitely do that. I think, but like so many other people, I have no interest in running for public office because it's public office. I'm sure you probably feel the same way.
I'll be your running mate. I'll take all the arrows and you can just glide through life.
If you want to do that, I'm totally fine with that. And I will make motorcycle riding mandatory. That sounds wonderful.
Mandatory. What is I always tell people, when you love motorcycles, I mean, the only time you don't want to ride is after a long ride that's been miserable. And you go, man, fuck this. And then about 10 minutes later, after you dry off or whatever, or maybe get some water or food, you go, all right, I'm good. So what was your most miserable ride where you went, man, I forget this?
My most miserable ride last year was when I was riding along the Oregon coast. It was the middle of October and I hit all 4 seasons of weather in a day. So it was beautiful, kind of like typical fall weather in the morning, fall or spring, same type of temperatures, little chilly, but nice, not too humid. By midday, it was 85 degrees and hot. So I was, you know, and when I started in the morning was in full gear, had my thermals on, whatever else, stripped down, all the vents are open at midday, you know, just like trying not to sweat through everything. Yeah. And it was a big ride day for me. I think I had about 10 hours of riding. And then unfortunately, right around 3:00, because I was on the coast, you had a huge squall come in and essentially the temperature went from being about 75 degrees to 35 degrees. And everything on me and on my bike froze. And like my helmet froze shut. My hands were so cold. By the time I stopped, it took about 30 minutes for my fingers to thaw out. It was just absolutely miserable. And the problem with sometimes when the storms roll in, the only thing you can do is keep going. So I had 90 minutes of riding essentially down into Newport, Oregon to get to my spot for the night. And it was just in this freezing cold, freezing fog, precipitation, half snowing, you know, miles per hour were cut in half. Cars were having a hard time getting through it too. The road was getting slippery. It was an absolute nightmare. And that was one of the worst ride evenings I've ever had. I got there, had a bourbon, let my body thaw. I actually had to walk into a restaurant with my helmet on because I couldn't get my helmet off. I had to let the actual just like frozen front of it and the visor melt, which was hilarious. I literally walked into a little pub with my helmet on and everyone's looking at me. And I kind of went over to the bartender and I was like lifting up underneath, like, I'm so sorry, I can't take my helmet off. And he's like, okay, let me get you a hot, wet rag and like put it on the front so it would start to melt. It was hilarious. But at the same time, I was miserable. It was awful.
Were your hands froze? Were your hand froze?
Oh yeah, like white all the way. Yeah, it was brutal. But I got there, I slept, and then first thing in the morning, I hit the road, and I had some of the most beautiful scenic shots of Oregon I've ever gotten and just ever seen. It was one of the best rides of my life. So it's cool to see how you get those parallels of like absolutely awful riding and then coupled up with best day of riding I think I had last fall. It was incredible. So yeah, that was probably the worst one last year.
Well, I look at your resume and you've been everywhere from Asia to the Arctic Circle. And did you have any interest in the movie I sent you in the DM about the?
Yes. Oh my gosh. It's actually on my list to watch tonight. I haven't had time to watch it yet, but It looks awesome. And I'm super interested in it. Yeah. It looks very cool.
I wish they spent more time talking about how they got the bikes developed for it. I mean, it's good, but it could have been better. But still, if you haven't seen it, I was on an airplane on my way over and it was on it's a Siberian lake. I think it's like a mile down. And I'm not going to ruin it for you. You got to watch it, but man, it's like, you just feel the cold. But I feel like I want to do it. Like, what is the one ride now that is churning at your heart to do? Like, you are going to do this soon. That's eating at your soul.
That's really hard. There's so many places. I mean, I want to go ride everywhere. Like a lot of people that love riding as much as I do.
We all do.
And I've been really fortunate that I've gotten to ride a lot of amazing places. I would really like to go back to Iceland and ride there again. That's probably the top of my list right now. I got to ride there in 2017 and it was incredible. But I haven't been back since then. Other than that, though, one of my big objectives within the next couple of years is to try and do a trip through Africa. Yes. And getting the ability to do that will take a lot of planning and everything else, baby steps. But that is kind of my goal in the next 4 to 5 years, is to get the full continent of Africa under my belt if I can, and ride from either top to bottom or bottom to top.
Oh, that's going to be awesome. I want to ride Morocco. I think Morocco would be great to ride the desert. I think it'd be great. Where specifically in Africa that really turns your crank? Like, I know the whole continent you say, but like, where in particular do you really you can't wait to see that part of Africa?
Morocco is definitely the top of my list. Like, yes. I think like a lot of people, it's such a beautiful country and the desert calls to a lot of us. I'm obviously a bit of a desert rat living out here, but for me in general, the idea of Africa is just that it's such a culturally diverse and very environmentally diverse place. Like, you're going to get everything there. You're going to get desert, jungles. You're going to have tons of rain. You're going to have really, really hot, dry days. I think overall, just that idea of being able to conquer so much in one trip and be able to see and experience so much is what calls to me more than anything else, because, obviously getting on crazy roads are fun. It's what you get to also like kind of hand in hand experience while you're on those roads. I think that's more important too. So getting to be able to ride into communities and experience what it's like there and have that, it just calls to me in a way like nothing else.
When did you realize like that was your calling? I mean, because you broke into it eventually step by step, but when did you realize? Was it like a moment with an epiphany where you were riding, you go, yes? Or was it just a matter of just over time, it eventually became who you were?
It's an overtime thing for me, because I'm obviously a writer. I'm a storyteller. That's my thing. That's what I love doing. It's my purpose and my calling in life. But I also have always loved to travel. I loved Anthony Bourdain when he was with us. Yes. I was a diehard, like so many people. And he was such an inspiration to me in my early 20s to travel as much as I could and experience as much as I could and to push myself a little bit. And I did a lot of that. I mean, I've been able to travel to a lot of different places and get a lot of countries and continents under my belt at a young age. And then when I started pairing up travel with motorcycle riding, that was essentially when it started for me. Was just, I loved being that exposed in the elements and that more also exposed to the culture of where I was. And it just slowly over time, everything's kind of morphed together. Like all these different facets of my life just became one thing. And it's been really cool to experience that, especially in the last year as everything has come together. But now it just feels like options are endless for where I can go next, which is an awesome feeling to have.
I mean, to me, you're a gold mine. I know you rep some companies, whatever. I mean, but you're like a gold mine. I mean, it's like I mean, you speak well, you look great, you actually ride, you know what you're talking about. You're not just a pretty face on a motorcycle just posing. Like, I mean, you know what you're doing. Yeah, funny stories. It's like you're a gold mine. So it's like I always want to ask when it comes to this, like, what was your biggest oh shit moment on a bike? We always have those moments on a bike where you go, whew, and what was your biggest oh shit moment?
I think my biggest oh shit moment was when I was in Vietnam. The first week I was there, I got out with a couple of buddies to do about a week of dual sport riding, some single track riding.
Yeah.
And it was in northern Vietnam. It's absolutely beautiful. If you ever get the chance to go, please go. But we did a couple of single track days. Now, granted, I'm a decent ADV rider. I can get through some gnarly stuff. I describe myself as an intermediate level just because I'm one of those people that I don't ever want to do anything that's going to get me hurt, et cetera, et cetera. So I take my time. I ride safe. In this situation, we were ripping around and having fun. And, it just was kind of funny to watch the track get smaller and smaller and smaller. And then the next thing you know, we kind of came out of the jungle and there's a sheer drop to our left and then a single track and then a wall. And I, at the time as well, was on a very weighted down 150. And that means I don't have nearly the control of the bike that I normally would. And so I immediately, one, started sweating through my suit of armor that I was wearing. But two, yeah, had to have that moment of like, shit, okay, I need my survival adrenaline to kick on and my riding skills to be right here, because if I go that way, it's trouble. And if I go this way, it's also trouble. So thankfully I got through it fine, and really was able to kind of enjoy the experience. But definitely a moment where you kind of feel your heart beating in your chest and in your ears, just a little bit of a kick to the ass. Yeah.
I love it. That's great, man. I mean, to me, it looks like, and by the way, I always want to ask you, are you a Gemini?
No, I'm a Virgo. I'm a pretty hardcore Virgo too.
What month is Virgo, and what's the virtue of Virgo?
It's September, and a lot of Virgos, I think we're one of the worst represented signs, because a lot of people think of us as being extremely type A and critical. And while we are very type A, I think one of the things that is cool about being a Virgo is just that we're just grounded. We're like a really diehard earth sign. So we're grounded in ways in ourselves that a lot of other people aren't, which is, I think, where that comes from. So, I mean, while a lot of my life is spent in a lot of uncertainty and upheaval and chaos, which I love, I personally feel very grounded in who I am and what I am. And I think that that's kind of a quintessential piece of me. And what I love about this lifestyle is if you have that in your pocket, you can do whatever you want. So yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Of course you can. Of course you can. Yeah. Now, do you have any plans for like another book coming up or anything? Or?
Yeah, I do. Actually, I'm in the final stages of writing a book about my year on the road. So it starts from my journey leaving Bend, Oregon last summer up until finishing the documentary I just filmed in June up to the Arctic Circle and back. So, and it's a full circle. It follows me out of Oregon, follows me traveling through the Western US, Canada, and Mexico last year, then to Asia, and then back here to do a really big film project. So it's something I'm super proud of. It's mainly just a lot of short stories from the road, some funny, a lot of it too is just my journey and what brought me here. And like a lot of people, the pandemic was something that was such a setback, and people really had to put their lives on hold. And I got divorced right before the pandemic hit. So me kind of starting over and having a life that I wanted really kind of got halted for a bit. And as soon as that changed, I was in motorcycles, I was traveling. And so a lot of the book follows my personal journey of kind of making peace with the past and building a life for myself for the first time in my life, in my adult life. And it's been a great journey to be on. And it's really cool to be able to put stories together to share with people that I think aim to inspire others to just know that they can put their minds to things and they can do anything they want to do.
Well, honestly, I remember just looking at your site going, I wonder if I should hit her up, whatever. And the one post on your Instagram, for some reason, that the one talked to me, was the picture of your septum in your hand, about how you wore that as an act of defiance. And then you realize, I don't need it no more. I don't know if you healed it, whatever, but you don't need it anymore. Yeah. And you done away with it. Talk to me about that, because I think that's the biggest one. For some reason, and I don't know why, but it spoke to me. And it made me think, like, maybe at one point writing was your way of getting away from, and tell me if I'm wrong or whatever. Maybe, like, I've never been married, so maybe that divorce, I don't know, I guess there's a blame, whatever. So talk to me about that.
Happy to tell you about it. So I was married for a couple of years, and I was together with the same guy for about 9, and we, just like a lot of people, grew apart, and but it was really hard. And he was my writing partner for all of those years too. We did a lot of our trips and things like that together, and shared a lot of travels together. And but one of the prerequisites he had when we were together, because obviously I started getting tattoos, was just that he never liked septum piercings. That was always a no. And I respected that. Again, like, very respectful, like, goes back to my parents' story. If somebody has a request, I'll abide by it. But the minute that we split, I went and pierced my septum, because for me, it was an act of defiance of identifying who I was and who I wanted to be. And I wanted to start that journey for myself of who I was by myself. And I had a lot of years where, especially when we first split, you just kind of go through a few months of even just working through accepting that your whole life is different. And then I moved out to Bend, and then the pandemic hit. And by the time the pandemic was over, my life was all about motorcycles, but I was still dealing with a lot of the pain of what I'd been through, and the grief of losing somebody that mattered to me very much. And it was really kind of cool to spend this last year making peace with the old version of myself, and really coming to enjoy the new version of who I was, and just as a solo person. And I got through my trip in Southeast Asia. And at the end of the trip in Thailand, I just had this moment where I was looking in the mirror, and I was like, you just don't need this anymore. I don't need this anymore. It doesn't feel like it fits with how I look at myself. And it's just something that I don't need. And so I just sat there and I pulled the thing apart and I took it out of my nose, and I never thought about it again. I think just because you hit a certain point, I think when you move into acceptance and letting go, where you just hit a moment of peace. And that's exactly what I found. And taking that septum ring out was that for me.
Wow. And was it through writing, or was it the peace that you finally, how did you come to that peace?
I think I came to that peace from spending a year of just being on a motorcycle, mainly alone, and being in my own head with my own thoughts and doing my own things. And hold on one second. Hey, babe, and I think that being able to have those moments of really struggling alone, of having to deal with thoughts alone, and then getting to experience some of the coolest things I ever had alone on a motorcycle, really just made me realize how profound of a life I could have. And that was ultimately what led me there. Was just, nothing had come to an end. A chapter of my life had ended, but it was a new time and a new chapter for me. And being on a motorcycle is the greatest freedom we have. It really is. There's nothing like it. And that was what sparked the beginning of me evolving to what I am now.
It should be an amendment in the Constitution. I think the motorcycle, it should be. Like, the second one is you can right to own a gun. I think that having a motorcycle should be an amendment in the Constitution. I don't know where, but it should be.
Yeah, I agree. I think it makes people a lot happier when they have them. So yeah, hopefully someday we can do that. If you run for office, we can make that happen.
No, you got to run. I'll be your running mate. Ain't nobody voting for me.
All
but
right, you can maybe do that. All right, deal.
Okay. What was the first tattoo you got after you came to that freedom? What was the first tattoo you got?
The first tattoo I got was actually that Van Gogh quote on my back. It was for my part, I know nothing with any certainty, but the sight of the stars makes me dream. That was the first quote I got. I think I got that quote when I was 22 or 23. So I didn't start putting ink on my body early. It was very, very late in life, but for a lot of people. But I started with the quote thing and just kind of went with it from there.
I'm gonna put you on the spot now. What's your top 5 writing songs for you?
Ooh, writing songs.
Yeah.
I think. Hold on, I'm gonna let my puppy outside. She's wandering.
Don't lose it. Don't lose it.
Don't worry, we're good.
Yes. Famous last words.
I know.
Who let the dogs out?
My poor basset hound ate something she shouldn't have this weekend, and she's been unfortunately suffering as a result. But
I get it.
My top 5 writing songs are, I listen to Dragula, Rob Zombie is probably number 1.
Yeah.
I love having that on there. What else do I have on there? I like listening to occasionally Odessa is like nice, chill writing music. Let's see. Man, so many things. I listen to a lot of 9 Inch Nails. So that is added in. I think Bite the Hand That Feeds is one of my favorites. Obviously being a rebel a little bit, that fits the MO that I have. And then classic rock. I mean, I love the Rolling Stones. So I have the Stones on my list all the time.
Favorite Rolling Stone song? Favorite Rolling Stone song?
Give Me Shelter, probably.
Oh, that's a great one. Yeah. I got to go with Sympathy for the Devil.
Sympathy for the Devil is probably my second favorite. It's just I think those top 5 Stone songs are always just, it doesn't matter when you listen to them. They're just always great. Yes. Always great.
Just the first couple of chords on Give Me Shelter, like, oh shit.
I know,
you know it's coming. Like, every Martin Scorsese movie has that song in it. And it's like, yes. Yeah.
It sucks you in the best way.
Yes, it does. Yeah. Yes, it does.
I think my last one is Bon Jovi, Dead or Alive. Like that's pretty quintessential writing song. Yeah, that's on there too. So,
I'll give you 2 suggestions. If you're ever traveling and and when you first wake up, put on Supertramp's it was early morning yesterday. I was up before.
I'm gonna write that down. All right, cool.
That song, when you first get up, I remember being in Nebraska. It's about 7:30, and I'm hitting the off ramp, and that song comes on as the sun's coming. I'm like, oh, this is perfect. That one and Bruce Springsteen's Gypsy Biker.
Oh, yes. I love that song. Yes, it's so good. I love Bruce Springsteen.
No, I love Bruce Springsteen. No, I love him. You don't love, I love him.
I got to see him in New Jersey probably about 6 years ago, and it was so fun. Like one of my favorite live shows of all time. Very, very cool.
Seeing Bruce Springsteen in New Jersey, it's like seeing Cardi B at a strip club. I mean, that's where he's home. Yes, unreal, at home.
Yeah.
Comfortable.
Yep. Yeah. It was such a cool experience.
Top 5 destinations now that top 5 destinations that you want to go to other than the ones we talked about, other than Africa or Morocco, other than, the place we talked to, top 5 destinations you really want to go to.
I want to go back to Southeast Asia and tour Cambodia. That's a big one.
Okay.
I actually would really like to go tour Greenland because it's just so profoundly beautiful. Down to Patagonia. I have not done Patagonia yet in South America, and that is really, really high on my list. It's definitely something I plan on doing sometime in the next couple of years. And it just, I think it'll be one of those life-changing experiences. Where else that we haven't talked about? I want to go ride in Croatia. I've heard amazing things about the roads there and how beautiful and scenic it is. And then I think last up is just Australia. I got lucky enough to ride in New Zealand, which was really, really fun, other than it being so windy. Oh my God. But Australia for me, I think would be such a cool time. And I have some friends that ride down there quite a bit. So I've heard great things about the ADV and off-road riding there.
I think you should go to Tasmania while you're there. I mean, it's right next to it, you know?
Yes. We'll tag that on for sure. Yeah.
Okay, when it's all said and done with, I mean, you got everything on your little bio. It says, you're a videographer, you're an author, you're an adventure writer. One word to describe you that you think is the best word to describe you. One word.
Well, it's the same word that I use in everything I do. I'm a renegade. no matter what. That's just kind of how I am. I definitely relate to and define myself as a storyteller, but in everything I do, I am the type of person that likes to do it my own way and forge my own path. And that is what I've essentially done with my life and what I've done with my career and what I do every day, kind of living an unconventional life like this. And I absolutely love it. So that's the one word I would use for myself.
I mean, do you realize like the effect you have? And this is another thing how I love about the now is that like you have little girls or maybe even, who knows, little boys that look up to you right now, that you're like their hero.
It was one of my favorite parts of Asia, actually. I think I touched on it in a post or two. It's definitely something I bring up in my book, which is one of the things that I loved so much was I would get off the bike in a smaller town or even in a bigger city, and little girls with their moms would just, their eyes would like explode looking at me. And the reason I loved that so much is because I just want especially younger girls to look at me and know that they can do whatever they want to do and they can be who they want to be. And, you know, we haven't all had the same opportunities to get there sometimes in our life, but it doesn't mean you can't change the path you're on and try and forge a new one. And I think being able to show young women that the world is theirs and they can find a way, they just have to be persistent and work hard. That's all I ever want to do. I mean, my biggest goal in life is to challenge people to chase their dreams, even when it's uncomfortable and even when it is difficult, because the best things in life aren't easy. The best things in life are challenging and they push you further than you think you can go. And that's one of my life missions, is to continue to push people to do that.
Good for you. Any other like different kind of riding you want to do or give it a shot? Like maybe have a track day on a motorcycle. Like
my goal for the fall is to get at least a week. I think a weekend of track days would be so fun. I was able to do some track days a couple years ago. It's been a long time, but I had so much fun doing it. It just really kind of opens up some different senses in your riding brain that you don't get just road riding or even just doing kind of more casual ADV riding. You know, it really hones in your instincts and your riding senses. So that's definitely on my list for the fall, as well as just honestly getting back out on the trails I love here. I'm very fortunate that I know Bend very well, and being able to rip around here and enjoy myself, even just after work for an hour or so, is what I love doing the most.
If you could, how many bikes would you own if you could? I mean, if you could have, an infinite amount of bikes, how many would it be, and what would the bikes be?
Well, that's the curse. Is the bike thing is always N+1, right? It's like it's always all the bikes you own plus one. And I definitely am one of those people. Before I left on the trip, I did have I had a KTM dirt bike. I still have my Honda. My Honda's my whole life. It's how I get around and how I do things. But if I had the choice, I would have probably a 250 dirt bike. I'd have my Honda. I would have a little bit bigger of an ADV bike, probably 10 or a 700. And then I'd have a touring bike like the Pan America, the 1250. I think having those different elements of being able to ride and do all those different things would be great. Now, maybe I'll get something flashy down the road, but those would be my four. I don't ever plan on selling my Honda. She's kind of been my spirit and soul while I've been on this trip. So that bike will be with me until it doesn't run anymore, which may not be ever. It's a Honda and they make some of the best engines out there. So yeah.
So what kind of flashy bike would it be? Maybe a Goldwing, you think?
Goldwing's not really my style.
Nobody wants to admit to a Goldwing.
What would you have done if I said, yeah, Goldwing? Yeah,
man, I would have freaked out. Like, are you serious? I mean, honestly, but the ones that are chopped down and blacked out, Honda got smart. They made it look like halfway, like kind of cool. I mean, they got smart with it because it's a what, 1800 engine. I mean, it's got a lot of power. It's just it's like an old man bike. You got to be like 80 years old to ride the bikes. But
it's definitely an old man bike. I don't know, because flashy bikes have never really been my thing. Yeah. So I'm going to have to think about that one and get back to you. But I will say, for it being, I guess, kind of pushed as an ADV and touring bike, the Pan Americas are very flashy and very fun. And at some point I would love to have a very flashy version of that in my garage because they are a blast to ride and so much fun to tour on. And I've been very fortunate. When I was actually in Thailand, I got to ride a Pan America for the whole month touring around there, and it was great. So that would probably be my flashy bike of choice.
I love it, man. My God, I had a great time with you, Grace. I knew it was going to be.
Yeah.
I knew it was going to be. I mean, like I said, I went through the pictures, and the septum was one in your hand. I was like, yes, I wanted to know about that, and I always want to know if you were getting away from something. And I just felt that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That and your post today, by the way, and your post today.
I know those tend to draw a little bit of attention. So it's just. I don't consider myself a part of the social media culture that identifies as influencer, but I do like to throw some fun things in there from time to time to challenge the algorithm. So, yeah.
But my favorite quote from today, actually, the one you go, age is just a measurement of time. How old you are is in how often you laugh, play, and learn every step of the way. And to me, it reminds me of Satchel Paige had the greatest quote. He goes, if you didn't know how old you were, how old would you be?
I think I'm always going to feel like I'm 28. I know I'm 34, but I feel like I halted at that age, and that's kind of how the age my soul feels. I like getting older, contrary to a lot of what a lot of people feel. To me, every year I get older is a year that I learn more. I get better at doing the things I do, and I'm happier just being who I am. But I think I'm always going to feel like I'm in my late 20s because I think when you have that in your heart, it just never goes away.
That's great, man. Honestly, that's awesome. Grace, anything you want to plug before we get out here? Anything you want to plug?
If you would like to follow me, I'm on YouTube under The Graceful Renegade. I do a lot of my personal videos there. I'm also on Instagram under The Graceful Renegade. If you would like to work with me, videography, photos, or even just do a ride, go to my website, thegracefulrenegade.com, and hit me up through there. It'll send me an email, but that's pretty much what I got for you.
Man, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate that. I subscribed already. I'm following you on YouTube, following your adventures. I love them. Keep doing it, but always keep wearing your helmet there, Grace. Okay?
Yeah, always helmets. Yes, for sure. Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. This has been a total blast.
No, thank you for having me. And sorry what happened last week, but it wasn't your fault. It was the dog's fault. It was the dog's fault.
Yeah, it is. I know. We love them, but they do run our lives to a certain degree.
But you got your dog back, and it's all that matters. So, Grace, thank you so much for being my guest. I wish nothing but the best. Thank you guys for watching Tales from a Gemini. And like I say about this time, you know the word, peace.